Hi, and welcome to the Philosopher's Clearinghouse. Premium thought at bulk prices. This is your very own dinner with Andre. I'm your host, Calvinist Klein, a.k.a. Romans 9:18, a.k.a. Joyful Jeremiah. Today's essay is about Thales and the Milesian school for the Philosopher's Clearinghouse. In the 5th century before Christ, people in the West started to try to make sense of the reality they were a part of. Questions like, what is the world like, and why are we here, were perennial questions even to the ancients. And the human search for explanation was on. The questions eventually settled into what are today broadly called the 5 W's. Who, what, when, where, how, and why. The complexity of reality made organizing our ideas about it non-trivial, and communicating our ideas, observations, and ways of thinking adds another layer of complexity. Over the centuries, concepts and principles have emerged that seem to offer one of the best ways to catalog and organize our knowledge about reality. Today we call it the scientific method, as if it were just one thing. But science is a large body of related concepts that have come together over the centuries. But the basic concept of science is the idea that reality can be modeled and explained to a large degree by organizing principles. For example, Isaac Newton famously developed the concept relating gravity to mass and a principle of acceleration. And so, over time, many of the questions asked by the 5 W's seemed to have a happy resolution in these organizing concepts. And so now we are back to the ancient Greeks. We have some history that early thinkers developed the concept of abstraction and organizing principles built around mental models that represented reality. Let's take a look at one of those famous figures. Thales of Miletus had a big idea. He wanted to answer the question, what is reality made of? He reasoned roughly as follows. The basic material of the cosmos must be A, something from which everything can be formed, B, essential to life, C, capable of motion, and D, capable of change. From these considerations, Thales made a leap in reasoning and concluded everything is made of water. Of course, taken literally, the conclusion sounds dubious to our contemporary ears. But if one substitute the term water with the word matter, then one can see Thales was perhaps trying to articulate something profound. He was dealing with the fundamental substance of things, and nothing seemed to uniformly represent all the various qualities he saw, quite like water. Thales is famous for suggesting that specific weather conditions explained why agriculture had a good harvest in some years and a poor harvest in other years, where people saw the activities of capricious gods. Thales saw impersonal, fundamental, constant underlying principles as being a better explanation. From Thales came the later Milesian school of Greek philosophy. Intellectual students who organized reality by naturalistic and material-based models. This is widely considered the start of modern philosophy and science. Later thinkers in this school developed the ideas further. Anaximander also thought that reality was built upon a single, universal substance from which everything impersonally evolved. He thought that it must be infinite and eternal. Where Thales thought everything was ultimately water, Anaximander thought that even water must be supported by something else. In his mind, he considered that reality was an object hanging in space. The seeds of tension inherent in all material-based organizing principles are evident here, for space, if it is anything, is not material, according to this model. What thinker has succeeded in organizing reality under one fundamental substance without having something left over, which remains unaccounted for? These remaining aspects of reality, clearly not material, and clearly not amenable to simple models, still obviously hold great importance, and no one has ever successfully reduced reality to one simple model. Anaximenes, a later thinker in the same line, thought that reality was universally composed of air. He based his conclusions on what later came to be characterized as evidence-based reasoning. Anaxagoras, Empedocles, and Zeno of Elea developed the thinking further. Empedocles thought reality could be reduced to four fundamental elements: earth, air, wind, and fire. All material things were some combination of those four things. And so the idea of fundamental basis and aggregate composition was articulated. Zeno articulated famous paradoxes that remain challenging to think about even today. The urge to simplify was so strong with Zeno that he postulated that reality was simple, not a composite, and that it was only to our appearance that the quantities of change and movement could be attributed. Well, how did the arc end with the Milesians and related early Greek thinkers? It ended as perhaps all secular philosophy must, in the defeat and despair of skeptical doubt. Pyrrho quantified the fallibility of observation and human senses and noted an early form of perspectivism, things that seem contradictory in one perspective and to one person can seem to be true to another. The only answer was to develop a sense of disbelief. The pinball machine of the human mind just went on tilt. So, where did things go wrong for these atheistic thinkers? From the perspective of this Christian critic, the problem with materialistic and naturalistic modeling is the problem that Kant articulated. The nature of reality is larger than A, what we can perceive about it, and B, what we can represent about it with models in our minds. In light of the obvious non-material aspects of reality, surely it is foolish to look for a materialistic explanation to explain all things. Indeed, there seems to be a dramatic cycle worthy of the finest Greek tragedy involved. A. Assume atheistic principles, rejecting all religion and dogmatism. B. Investigate reality with those impersonal tools. C. Find reality to be much bigger than such tools can span. And then D. Retreat into disbelief and skepticism. One can read Erasmus's work, In Pursuit of Folly, to get a further feel for the tragedy of this materialistic zeitgeist. For the Philosopher's Clearinghouse, I'm Romans 9:18.